Now, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes, because once you see how this actually works, you will not be able to unsee it. Not what they said happened, but how they made sure that you never questioned it.
Tim Walz, he called me far right. He called me a delusional conspiracy theorist. And then he also called me a white supremacist. Yet he can't deny any of the claims. Because when you're speaking facts, these people can't come after you. And so when I was just speaking the facts about fraud is fraud, 89% of the population committing the fraud is Somalian, that does not make me a racist. Dollars have no race to it. It's just a pure fact that money's being stolen from Republicans and Democrats.
So we have seen no denial from Tim Walz at this point. Is that correct?
No denial.
Yeah, that's
a
telling.
lot of deflecting.
Yeah, notice something? Like he said, not one denial, not one correction, not even a rebuttal. Just labels.
Tim Walz, he called me.
Now, when someone, calls your names instead of answering the questions, that's not confidence, man. That right there is insulation. This is step one. Discredit the messenger so, nobody listens to the message. And watch how well that actually worked out.
How do you feel about the Somali fraud in Minneapolis?
I'll be honest, I haven't researched it a lot, but from what it looks like to me is it looks like it's a made-up concept from people trying to smear Governor Walz.
I checked into that a little bit, right? There's nothing going on there. There's like this edgelord going around stirring up his mega conservative base, but none of this stuff is rooted in truth and reality. And I think if you just go out, do your own research, like actually do that. Like go out and just like look at video evidence. Come to a realistic opinion about what's going on in the world. It's a scapegoat, right, for anti-Somali immigration hate.
I don't know much about the Somali fraud. Sounds like bullshit.
So there's a question as to whether it is a fraud. I don't know. I'm not following that real closely. So I will reserve judgment on that.
I mean, I think that they were just using this as an excuse to go in there and scare people and show that they can be really powerful. I don't think it's authentic at all.
Oh, really? So this is his basis response when confronted with evidence. This is the part they don't want you to start noticing. Trust me, these people aren't confused. They're trained. You can show indictments. You can show them court filings. You can show them, you could walk them through it slowly. I mean, step by step. And they'll still say it's fake. That doesn't happen accidentally. That's what narrative protection looks like on the ground. So now the question becomes really simple. If the base was trained to deny it, what did the people at the top know?
It's the morning of March 15th. We're chasing a tip about a man who's leaving the country. Our sources tell us he just took a carry-on bag through security that was packed with $1 million cash. You can do that as long as you fill out one of these government forms. We're told these cloak and dagger-like scenarios now happen almost weekly at MSP International. The money is usually headed to the Middle East, Dubai, and points beyond. Our sources say last year alone, more than $100 million cash left MSP in carry-on luggage.
What we were interested in is where it was going.
The national go-to expert on what's behind these mysterious money transfers is Glenn Kearns. He's a former Seattle police detective who spent 15 years on the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force until his retirement.
It's an outright crime. It's unbelievable.
Kearns tracked millions of dollars in cash that was leaving on flights from Seattle. It was coming from hawalas, businesses used to courier money to countries that have no official banking system. Some immigrant communities rely on hawalas to send funds to help impoverished relatives back home. Kearns discovered some of the money was being funneled to a hawala in a region of Somalia that's controlled by the Al-Shabaab terrorist group. How could they possibly come up with such big bucks to transfer back home?
We had sources that told us it's all about it's welfare fraud. It's all about the daycare.
To better understand the connection between daycare fraud and the surge in carry-on cash, you have to look at the history of this crime.
5 years ago, the Fox 9 investigators were first to report that daycare fraud was on the rise here in Minnesota. We exposed how some businesses were gaming the system to steal millions in government subsidies meant to help low-income families with their child care expenses.
This is a great way to make some money. I think it's kind of that informal word of mouth.
In order for the scheme to work, the daycare centers need to sign up low-income families that qualify for child care assistance funding. These surveillance videos are from a case prosecuted by Hennepin County. They show parents checking their kids into a center only to leave with them a few minutes later. Sometimes no children would show up. But either way, the center would bill the state for a full day of child care.
They knew the whole time. This is where the story changes, because now we're not talking about missed signs. We're talking about documented warnings, reports, audits, red flags. And the money kept moving anyway. At some point, ignorance stops being believable. And once you accept that, the next question is pretty much unavoidable. How big was this really?
Receipts prove Walz and Omar are the kingpins of $8 billion fraud. Evidence showed whistleblowers were threatened with death. New explosive evidence confirms that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar are not just negligent bystanders, they are the political kingpins behind the largest pandemic fraud scheme in American history, totaling a staggering $8 billion. This is no longer a conspiracy theory. It is a documented crime scene. Fox News has obtained damning photos showing Walz and Omar smiling and posing with Abdul Dahir Ibrahim, a Somali illegal immigrant with a deportation order dating back to 2004. While this criminal was robbing American taxpayers blind, he was rubbing elbows with the very politicians supposed to protect the state. Why? Because the receipts don't lie. The investigation reveals a sickening pay-to-play scheme. These fraudsters didn't just steal, they kicked back the loot to their political protectors. Records show over $50,000 in campaign donations flowed from these indicted criminals directly into the war chests of Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, and Ilhan Omar. They took max donations from the very thieves, stealing food out of the mouths of autistic children and the poor. They sold their souls for campaign cash, turning a blind eye, while Medicaid and food programs were drained dry to fund Somali gangs and potentially even terrorist activities abroad. Perhaps the most terrifying revelation is the mafia-style tactics used to cover up this $8 billion heist. Brave whistleblowers who tried to sound the alarm weren't just ignored by the Walz administration, they were threatened with death. Reports confirm that witnesses were told they would lose their lives if they didn't back down. This is organized crime operating from the governor's mansion. When staff members tried to point out the fraud, they were scolded and silenced by Walz's chief of staff. They knew. They all knew. And they chose to protect the criminals over the citizens. Dr. Oz put it bluntly, this administration looked the other way because they needed the votes. They sacrificed the safety and financial security of Minnesota for political power. From housing scams ballooning from $2.6 million to $104 million to fake licenses increasing by 283%, the evidence of systemic looting is undeniable. Tim Walz isn't just incompetent, the evidence suggests he is complicit. Governor Walz claims the state is now auditing the situation, a convenient maneuver only enacted after the FBI raided the premises and the scandal became public. This is reactive damage control, not leadership. The reality is stark. Taxpayer funds may have ended up in the hands of entities linked to terrorism, while the politicians responsible for safeguarding those funds were busy cashing campaign checks from the very thieves they were supposed to regulate. Dr. Oz put it best. Look under your couch for spare change, because we are done footing the bill. It is time to freeze the funding, arrest the enablers, and throw the book at every politician who touched this dirty money. Don't let the truth be buried. If you demand justice and accountability, like this post, share it immediately and follow our page for real-time updates on the investigation.
This is the part where people get really uncomfortable, because now it's not just fraud, it's structure. Money flows, campaign photos, policies that just happen to weaken oversight. Just so happened. Now, no one's saying this was sloppy. It was smooth. But here's where it stops being speculation, right? Because eventually the quiet people speak.
Working on this issue for years. You've spoken to the whistleblowers personally. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You have an understanding that 1,000 whistleblowers running an account on X have come forward to expose fraud in Minnesota state agencies, and they have been entirely ignored by Tim Walz and have even been retaliated against. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Even this morning, I got another message.
Well, in your experience, are their claims credible or are they politically motivated against Walz?
They are completely credible, not politically motivated.
In fact, many of these are Walz administration employees, correct?
They are actually Democrats as well.
Can you quickly give us one example of the retaliation these folks have been facing?
Yes, I can. In my opening statement, I mentioned that the most severe ones was that they would be fired with cause, so they couldn't have unemployment insurance, that they would be blacklisted from all state agencies, and I bet that it's also Hennepin County and Ramsey County, as you know, those are Democrat run, and much, much more.
Based on what you've learned, Representative, over the last several years, do you have any doubt that Governor Tim Walz knew about this fraud as it was occurring?
He absolutely knew that it was occurring.
This right here is what we call the kill shot. 1,000 people don't risk their careers for a rumor. 1,000 people don't coordinate lines across agencies. And notice something important. These weren't outsiders. These weren't even activists. These were insiders, and they were ignored until they couldn't be. And when insiders talk, the money trail usually follows.
Developments in Minnesota. We're going to turn our attention back to the Somali fraud investigation. As we've discussed before, authorities have discovered suitcases containing hundreds of millions of dollars in a Minnesota airport. Now, in the meantime, Republicans are working to cut funding for Somali-led organizations with alleged ties to the massive fraud scandal. Now, as the FBI pushes forward with its own investigation, one key question arises. What does accountability even look like in this case moving forward? So joining us now to talk about all of this and more is New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Hey, great to be on with you too. What a crazy time we're seeing here, aren't we?
Absolutely insanity. And I know oversight in the House is looking into these fraud allegations, but I wonder if it's even bigger than we have uncovered thus far. The $700 million in cash going out of the airports there. I have a feeling we are still just scratching the surface.
Yeah, it looks really bad, and obviously very alarming to see that this U.S. cash has been legally going through our airports. And of course, there is a requirement of reporting if you're going to carry more than $10,000. There's a reporting requirement, but I think a really interesting part about this is if, isn't it going to be a little suspicious when you start seeing 10,000, 100,000, millions, and now, more, as John reported earlier, more money that goes through JFK, goes through the Minneapolis airport. Something's wrong there. And I think something that's very interesting that we impose on banks is that banks are required under banking law to require and file and keep track of what they call suspicious activity reports. This is something I think we need to do now when we see the large amounts of U.S. cash, and it's always U.S. cash. I mean, you're not going to see, Chinese yen or anything else going through there. And U.S. cash is king, and we need to certainly have this type of cash exchange reported. It's interesting because you see all this illegal immigration we've had over this time. And by the way, most of those Somalis that are in Minnesota probably came through a refugee program, and probably many of them are already legal American citizens. So this suspicious activity report, some kind of accounting for cash, I think would really be helpful.
Wow. 700 million in suitcases. Hear that carefully. Declared, flagged, reported, and still nothing happened. That tells you everything you need to know, because this wasn't invisible. It was tolerated. And once numbers get too big to hide, the media tone, it changes.
Well, this is the best thing that has happened to Tim Walz all week, because it's helping serve as a distraction from the massive fraud scandal that he pioneered in his own state. And more broadly, it's serving as a distraction from the abysmal immigration policies that got us to this point in the first place. Why is ICE in Minnesota right now? Because under Tim Walz's watch, Minnesota's treasury was plundered by illegal immigrants in these fraud daycare scandals. Why is ICE beefed up in the first place? Because Tim Walz Democrats, including his former running mate Kamala Harris, allowed millions upon millions of people into our country in the first place. We cannot lose sight of what has led us to this point. Tim Walz would like us to forget that, but we won't.
Oh, that's right.
Well, this is the best
Looks
thing.
like all roads lead to Tim Walz. This guy, man, he tried to escape. Well, he's attempting to escape from the accountability, but he's doing a very poor job at it. I'm telling you, every finger is going just like this. All roads leading to my boy, because he's losing that protection. And when protection, cracks, the consequences, they start getting whispered.
There's independent reporting going around this weekend that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is going to resign as early as this week. Now, I've been saying that more than likely this was going to happen for a long time. And certainly after last week, when he said he was no longer going to run for a third term, I had said that give it 4 months, long before the primary, but Governor Tim Walz will have to resign. And the reason why is because he's a liability to whoever ends up running for Democrats for governor here in Minnesota, whoever replaces him. So, for example, Amy Klobuchar, if she wants to announce, she's embroiled right now in the controversies that are plaguing the office of Governor Tim Walz. Between the fraud and ICE here in Minnesota, the shooting that took place this week, if she's going to run, and everybody says that Amy Klobuchar is going to run, then she needs to announce, and she needs to announce soon. But if she announces within the next couple of weeks, she's going to be announcing right in the middle of the fraud controversy, more than likely continued ICE controversy, and all of her running, the beginning of her campaign will be focused on, do you support what Governor Tim Walz is doing as governor? What do you have to say about the systemic fraud? Because she never ever talks about it. This is where Governor Tim Walz is a liability. So what does he do? Well, he basically says, I'm taking one for the team. He's been talking during these press conferences as if Trump was personally targeting him, getting all somber in his political theater during one of the press conferences after the shooting this week, saying that I wish the federal government would just leave us alone. He'll play the role of martyr. He'll say, I'm going to step down. I'm a distraction. Trump is targeting me. They wanted me to resign. You get what you want. Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan becomes governor, but she has no interest in really fulfilling that governor's role because she's running for her own run for Senate. So Amy Klobuchar now has a clear pathway. She can now sort of become the de facto governor for the remainder of the year and guide Peggy Flanagan through these particular controversies, showing that she's worthy to be governor. Now, I don't know if this reporting is true or not, but I have been saying, and I still believe, for all the reasons that I just mentioned, that Governor Tim Walz is going to resign. It would not surprise me personally if this reporting going around this weekend absolutely turned out to be accurate. I'll certainly be talking about it either way on my weekly radio show, Monday through Friday, 6 until 9 a.m. Central Time on the iHeartRadio app, and you can always get caught up on the podcast as well, and I hope you'll follow me here on the platform. Thanks.
Now, this isn't confirmation, but it most definitely is something else. So what happens when the people in the room realize the story can't be stopped? Power doesn't fall loudly. It leaks first. Man, this is a lot. I wanted to play this clip at the end. I'm not going to lie to you, but it got like fire and all that. It's an ad. A Tim Walz ad. I'll tell you what, though, I'll retweet it and y'all can go follow me on X at Kingdom Reacts and you'll be able to see this play. But it's so cold. This was super funny. And I wish I can play it. But what? Hold on. All right. It says my battery is exhausted, so I only got a few seconds. Here's the takeaway. This wasn't about compassion. This was about oversight. And it definitely wasn't about helping people. It was about control. Control of the story, control of the outrage, and ultimately control of you. The real scandal, I think, isn't just about the money. It's about how people were told not to look and how aggressively anyone who did was punished for it. Hey, it looked like they trying to stop me. However, if this video made something click for you, you already know why. And if you made it to the end, put I see you, because y'all can't see me. But yeah, I appreciate y'all for bearing with me. I'm going to go charge this camera. I've been doing a lot of work today trying to get the truth out. But be safe. Go check on a friend today. You can quite literally be saving their life. And thank y'all for making the channel what it is. We are approaching 500 subscribers in less than a week. Amazing.